I was thinking about this. This is the third time that I've testified before a House committee on this. I don't want to do this anymore, so we have to get it done this session. And I believe there was a version of our package where you, Mr. Chairman, were a sponsor of one of the bills, and I was thinking this is kind of an unintended benefit to the package. We're gaining supporters from the legislature by, at one point or another, including everybody as a sponsor of the bills here. So we thank you for your leadership on this as well, and certainly thank Representatives Guerra and Rendon for helping to push this forward in the Michigan House. As was mentioned, 4.5 years ago, we helped to draft, we drafted the initial bills that have been amended a few times and improved over the years. I do want to give a little bit of a history, I think, to how we got to the point where we were today. So as mentioned before, Michigan ranks dead last in terms of government ethics, government accountability, government transparency by the Center for Public Integrity. And they are an independent group that did an independent analysis of all 50 state governments. And they took 13 functions of government that they examined, and Michigan failed 10 of them, ranking us dead last. And some of the categories that we failed were public access to information, where we rank 42nd out of 50. I don't know which 8 states do it worse than us. Executive accountability, 50th out of 50. Legislative accountability, 50th out of 50. So we look at what are other states doing that Michigan is not, that keeps us perpetually at the bottom of these rankings. And it's clear that we are one of 2 states that don't subject our legislature or our governor to the parameters of open records laws that other states do. So, you know, the idea that we're fighting to be the 49th state to do this really shows how far behind we are, and which is why Senator McBroom and I have such an urgency to move this package forward. I'll probably go in right now into the kind of main part of why we're here today and why we're testifying on this, and that's the differences between FOIA and LORA, and why we're talking about 2 separate acts here. So back in 2015, and for Representative Robbie's benefit, I have a journalism degree. I know that's something you were curious about. Then Representative Brandon Dillon just had a bill simply to apply the Freedom of Information Act to the governor's office and the state legislature. And knowing that FOIA is not applicable to either body, because FOIA is the journalist's lifeblood to get information to the public about what government officials do, I co-sponsored that bill. And then into the fall, we had some issues with 2 legislators, and my friend to the right of me chaired an expulsion committee process, which really highlighted we need to make sure that legislators are subjected to sunshine, so that they're not creating a toxic atmosphere in their office, that we don't have nefarious actors in the legislature. So then Representative McBroom came up to me and said, listen, I'm with you on this issue. This is something that's a clear blind spot in our transparency laws, but we have to do it right. So we sat down with our respective legal counsels to craft the Legislative Open Records Act. And the reason we have this separate act is because there are things in the Constitution that would prevent us from being subjected straight up to FOIA. There's a speech and debates clause that protects legislators from free speech and debate in carrying out the duties of their job. And what that basically means is if you take a vote, your political opponent can't sue you in the way that you carry out your duty as a state legislator. And so the judicial branch has no ability to weigh in on the way that we carry out our constitutional duties to do our job here. So if we subject the legislature to FOIA and somebody wants to appeal the information that we do provide for that person, the judicial branch cannot weigh in on the way that we carry out our duties here. So what we took is the exact language of FOIA. We put in that language into the Legislative Open Records Act, and we created a different appeal process, which I'll walk through. I don't want to monopolize the time here. I don't know if you want to weigh in at all on the early history of this.
Anytime, Senator Moss.
It's really great that he's doing everything that I used to have to do, and I'll let him continue.
Well, thank you. So Here's what happens. So somebody wants to get a document from my office, and they initiate a request, and they call up my staff. My staff is compelled in these bills by 3 business days to kick over that request to the LoRa coordinator, which operates within the business office. So there's no way for me as a senator or you as a representative even to weigh in and say, well, I want to show this person this, but I don't want to show this person that. Or I give this person that information, but don't give this person that information. It's the LoRa coordinator, independent of our offices, with no skin in the game on what these documents mean or the context behind them, to provide that information. And I can't manipulate that process whatsoever. So let's say the individual does not feel that they've gotten the information that they sought, and they appeal that process. Then it goes to the administrator of the Legislative Council, which, believe it or not, I think is one of the last bipartisan, nonpartisan entities that we've been able to hold true here in the legislature. And so then that administrator will hear the appeal. Again, is not even the first person that issues the denial or doesn't issue the information. It's yet another separate person taking a separate view of what is the information requested and how do we provide that to the person. And so, as Representative Lilly has mentioned, appeals actually cost less in LoRa than it does in FOIA. So we've done everything we could to make the appeals process fair, as removed as possible from the member's office, but with also complying with the speech and debates clause. And so that's why we have a totally separate act than FOIA. I will tell you, other states have a speech and debates clause and have FOIA, and FOIA is unenforceable. You just have to look to Indiana. Indiana has a speech and debates clause, and they subject the legislature to FOIA, and the first legislator said, well, I don't have to be subjected to FOIA because of the speech and debates clause, and that was it. No more FOIA. It exists, but you cannot get information. We don't want that system here in Michigan. We don't want to be litigated in the courts for a decade to come, and we want to have something that gives the access to the citizens of their legislators right here, right now, and that's why we created this act. And with